Let's Take This Outside with Marianne Iveson, the podcast where she speaks to athletes, outdoor professionals, and scientists about why they connect with nature.
This episode is one that no one should be surprised by, but you may know that Gatineau Park is my Roman Empire. Today I'm talking to Rachel Paquette, a program officer in nature interpretation with the National Capital Commission, or NCC. Rachel has a Bachelor of Science degree specializing in ecology and a master's diploma in environmental education, which reflects in her dedication to bridging the gap between people and the environment. And Rachel answered all my questions about Gatineau Park, the National Capital Region's conservation park. It is the largest green space in the region, occupying an area of more than 361 square kilometers, and is a place of rich and unique biodiversity. It is the second most visited park in Canada and a destination for outdoor enthusiasts to engage in recreational activities that respect the environment. Including myself, it's my playground. Please welcome Rachel Paquette from Gatineau Park. Rachel, this has been a long time coming. I've been tagging your team on social media for years. I mention Gatineau Park in almost every episode of this podcast. It's my playground. I'm very happy to chat with you. Thank you for coming on.
Great. Yeah, I'm happy to be here.
I instantly liked you because we have a mug from a similar maker, and I'm totally blanking on her name right now, but it's called the Wakefield mug. It is.
Yeah.
Can you tell me, do you know more about it?
No, I don't. Other than it's a Wakefield potter, and I also have a bowl. It's this beautiful handmade mug. I think I've picked it out in her studio before, but it shows the Gatineau Hills. So I'm like, oh, we're like this. I'm like, oh, I like Rachel. I instantly liked you from the mug. It's my chosen mug for today. Yeah. It's amazing.
I'll try to get a picture of it before we go. Rachel, did you grow up around here? What was your first introduction to Gatineau Park?
Yeah, it's been my backyard my whole life. Yeah, so now I live I'm actually looking at the park. I'm home and I'm looking right across the street to the park. I'm close to where the Cégeps are. And I grew up in Aylmer. And I remember we're 5 children. I'm the youngest. And I remember my parents taking us cross-country skiing and we all had the same toque. Yeah, so I'll have to say that I grew up in the park. It's been great. I now I choose it as an adult. My children have grown up by the park and it's been my career as well. So
what did you grow up doing? You said cross-country skiing, but what else did you do in the park growing up?
Yeah, so I remember cross-country skiing. We all had snowshoes, the really big traditional kind. It's funny how I'm a kid right now telling you these memories. And we went cycling on Sunday bike days. I remember we were able to bike on the lower Aylmer Road, then all the way to Champlain, and then to the Champlain Bridge, and then come up through the park. So it was just part of our weekend activities as a family. And I remember my parents, that was just the plan. That's just what we did. And we actually did a lot of camping in Lac Philippe. My earliest memory is being in the Lusk Cave by the Lac Philippe campground, where we would stay for a few weeks in the year. And I remember hanging on to my dad's neck thinking the water's way too cold and I might die. And now I've brought in groups of various ages through the caves going, we're all going to be okay. And this is awesome, So.
Rachel, I have so many questions to ask you, but I keep getting inspired as you're speaking to ask you more questions.
Go for it.
I do want to ask before we dive into what is Gatineau Park, what is your favorite part of the park, if you can name one? Because I have my favorites. So what is your favorite?
I think for me, it would be in the fall, just walking through rustling leaves, no specific trail, but just being on a trail when the ground is covered with colorful leaves that have just fallen, and to know that there's kind of that seasonal shift from kind of a busy, warm season and going into this one that we've just entered into now.
Yeah, we're recording in the middle of December right now. So I have to ask for people listening, we're already talking very much inside, but what is Gatineau Park? And what do you do as a program officer?
So Gatineau Park is a conservation park. It's situated about 15 minutes from downtown Ottawa. It has recreational activities that are practiced year-round. And all those activities need to be done, with respect to the conservation mandate. And my role is kind of in between those two things, where I'm responsible for the environmental education in the park. So the activities that are guided either with school groups or in the summer at the campground, at the outdoor theater or by a campfire. And in winter, we go snowshoeing with school groups. And also we have groups of new Canadians, people that have just moved to Canada and are just experiencing winter for the first time. So that contact with the visitor is my job is to try to get in there and have questions answered if they have a question about the park, and have them understand why, these activities need to be done in a specific way because of the conservation mandate. To me, it's all about answering questions. You want to know what animal lives here? Let's talk about that. How do they survive? What are species at risk? Like all those questions. We don't have enough people and we don't have enough activities to always be in a human contact with visitors, but, interpretation signs and now social media, kind of that. My job is that contact of education with people that are visiting the park.
I do want to say that your social media team is killing it. Their memes are great. They're doing great. The last couple of years, they've really stepped it up, and it's funny, it's relatable. So I just want to give you kudos for that. But what is the conservation mandate of Gatineau Park?
So the park is about, in kilometers square, if that says anything to you, it's about 361 square kilometers. But what it also means is it's about 50 kilometers long by 25 kilometers wide. If you're driving around it, it takes about 2.5 hours. That amount of space is big enough to have a pretty healthy biodiversity, like a lot of different plants and different animals, and their health is what we're trying to maintain. Making sure that all these amazing trees and other, smaller plants and all the animals have what they need. As I was saying, we're 15 minutes away from a lot of people. About 1 million people live within 15 minutes of this amazing park. We want them to benefit from being outside, learning about nature, all those health benefits of being active and just, being contemplative in nature as well. So what it means to be a conservation park is our main focus is the health of the plants and animals that are there. And so we want to keep that biodiversity. We want to make sure that the amount of variety we have there stays healthy. Some of the species aren't doing so well. And so those are the ones that we call species at risk. And so there's a special focus, a special lens on those that student biologists and researchers from, other universities are close by, and just people within the park, employees, are working to find out more about what these species at risk need and what we could do to protect them. And so that's kind of a focus, just again, to keep that variety up and healthy. It also means that when we go in, all those trails are fragmenting the park, are dividing what's on the left to what's on the right, and that's someone's home. So we want to make sure that the trails that are being used are well maintained and safe, but also that we're using only them. So a conservation park means, and it's funny because, when I ask children, what are the most important rules? They come up with a lot of them, but the one that we focus on is staying on official trails, making sure that we've made our print there, that, we have a footprint, we have an impact when we go into the park, but we want it to not necessarily get bigger and bigger. So that footprint that we have, we want to maintain it and keep it safe, but keeping those animals safe as well. So kind of, making sure the diversity is there, the ones that are at risk that we take care of. And because the park, it's relatively big, but it's not as big as Algonquin Park in Ontario. And it's not as big as Mont Tremblant, another 2.5 hours away from here. So a lot of the focus as well is on having corridors, like areas that if you're a coyote in the park and you want to get to the Ottawa River or you want to get to the Gatineau River, that you have green space or safe space that you can get to part of your habitat, even if it's private land, even if it's, provincially owned, that animals have a way to maintain their much bigger habitat. The park's not out their whole story. So that's the focus of a conservation park, is making sure that we maintain the health of the water, the plants, the animals, the habitats that are within it.
What are some of the species at risk?
So I'm not good at naming a few, but certainly we have a lot of them are on the escarpment, like on the early escarpment when you go to Lexville Falls, for example, because that's a microclimate. There's a cedar tree that's there, that's only there. There's ferns that are there, some flowering plants alongside the trails. So if you're traveling off trail, often you're kind of in the land of fragile ecosystems. So the Blandings turtle is an animal that I can name. So that turtle is losing habitat. We have a tree frog that we know is endangered, and that we know we also have seen in the park or close to. So being able to monitor them, and that's where a lot of the work is done by some of the student biologists that come there. They're doing their bachelor's or master's degree, and they have a student job, and they are really, really helpful to the park team. And they come and they are on the field monitoring the various species.
I feel like one of those very ecological, fragile places is Pink Lake, because there's a lot of signs around Pink Lake, which is one of the most popular destinations for hiking, because it's so accessible. There's a lot of stairs / you can drive right to it at certain times of the year. This is a question I'm sure you get. Why isn't Pink Lake pink? And why is it called Pink Lake? Yeah,
that's a good question, and it's an easy one to answer. Luckily, it's not like these chemicals that are in but that have disappeared. It's no longer. So it was never pink. The Pink family are a family of settlers that lived right around that area. Pink Lake is named after that family that lived there, over 400 years ago, and that settled in. And so, if in the area, if you come from here, there's Pink Road and there's Pink Cemetery, and actually one of the conservation officers that still works in the park is Jason Pink. So they're part of our culture. The Pink family are part of our cultural history, and that lake is named after them because they lived right by.
Okay, then I can definitely tell my boyfriend, who's like, I think it's named for. I'm like, no, it's because it's a family. It's not.
It's the family. Yeah.
Let's shift to more humans for a second. What are the most popular activities in the park? And what are the most recent additions that you've taken into consideration for trails? Like fat biking, what are the most popular and what are the ones that are newer that you're taking into consideration?
Yeah, fat biking is certainly newish now. I remember when it was a pilot project, maybe 6-7 years ago. So, snow biking, fat biking was introduced to the park. So things tend to start as a pilot project to see how it goes. But now if we skip to this year, and we have over 60 kilometers of snow biking trails. And so that's a new addition, and it's working really well. The fat bikers need snowshoers to go first after there's a snowfall, because all of the fat biking trails are shared with snowshoe trails. They're not compacted, and they're not, maintained with machinery. Those trails are, snowshoers go first. I really thought it would be an issue because, if you're walking in the summer and a mountain biker comes by you, they might be going quite fast, and it could be surprising. But because fat bikers have, wide tires and the pressure is so low, you hear them. They're going to go, shh, shh, shh. They're coming behind you. You hear them. They're not going so fast. They're really happy that you're out there snowshoeing, making sure that their trail is maintained for their sport. And so it's a popular activity. The trails in the southern section of the park tend to be a bit more challenging. There are some in the northern section of the park that are less so. So all levels of fat biking is now accessible to the park. You need a fat bike, but now in the area there are a lot of outfitters that will rent fat bikes for 3 hours or for a day, and so it makes it so people can give it a try, And the only time you can't be fat biking is right after a snowstorm, if your wheel is going in, digging into the snow over 2.5-3 centimeters, you kind of have to go back home, get your snowshoes, and join the snowshoers so that the trails become compacted and safe.
What are some other activities? We have cycling, we have hiking, we have cross-country skiing, we have, what are the activities mainly in the park?
So skiing, cross-country skiing is huge in the park. So over 200 kilometers of trails, and they can be on parkways that are roads in the summer. And so there's lots of skate skiing, and there are tracks set for traditional cross-country
for
skiing.
Classic skiing,
Yeah, classic skiing, thanks. And there's backcountry. And so all levels, cross-country skiing is huge. And a lot of people come from all around the world, actually, to ski in our well-maintained park and trails, and really appreciate the amount of trails, but also how they're maintained. So that's a huge activity. Snowshoeing has gotten a lot more popular even in the last 10 years. We do guided events on snowshoes where people can try snowshoes on, and we talk about winter activities and how animals adapt to winter. And so I'm seeing a lot of different types of people trying snowshoeing for the first time and going, I can do this, because if you can walk, you can snowshoe. And with the modern style snowshoes these days, it really is true. They're light, they're not super expensive, and off you go on the snowshoe trails. And you can get to a day cabin and warm up and enjoy a snack. So there's all types again of levels, and you can go for 3 kilometers, but you can also go for 30 if that's what you'd like, So snowshoeing is a big deal in winter for sure. So we're skiing, we're snowshoeing, we're fat biking in winter, and then in the summer, and I guess in all 3 other seasons, we have mountain biking and regular road biking, and people will enjoy roller skiing on the closed parkways in summer. And the lakes get warm enough, now they're icing over, but the lakes get warm enough to swim. And so the beaches at Mitch Lake and at Philippe Lake and at Lac La Pêche are all places where people and families and will just enjoy part of a day or most of a day and have a good time in the lake and picnicking on the outside of,
I learned how to swim earlier this year. Open water swimming in Meech Lake is one of the most magical experiences that I've ever had. And I was like, now I enjoy Gatineau Park and I'm like on the water, on the land, on my bike, on my ski.
And see, that's new too, open water, kind of more regulated. Open water swimming is only a few years old, where you can go from one buoy to the next, and so it feels quite safe. You're going to get to a buoy where there's a ring if you need to rest, and every couple 100 meters, and off you go to swim 1.5 kilometers, 2 kilometers in gloriously high quality pristine water. And I last summer a friend and I were swimming, and we put our heads down and we saw a loon swim under like
cool.
Right. And we just popped up our heads and went, oh my gosh. And we couldn't talk for a minute.
That's so Canadian.
And I mean, exactly. We are in the lake and it's evening, and we kind of, are looking at our clock going, the sun's going to go down, and a swims, a loon and comes and swims right beneath us. So that's a new, and I think it's well appreciated. People really enjoy feeling safe and going from one buoy to the next at Meech Lake, and knowing how to, regulate it so that people feel safe and people know where to go and know the distance they're going. But also, all that to say that if you want to stay within the buoyed lines when there's a lifeguard, that's also great. Playing in the water is amazing. And so that's great too. Again, on all levels, you're welcome to the park, kind of an activity for sure.
I just want to circle back to you mentioning rentals for a second. I know there's a lot of outfitters who are private who do rentals of pretty much everything. Does Gatineau Park, I think they have some partners who do like bike rentals, but with like mobility issues, and like, isn't related to plein air have rentals? Like, who are you partnering with for rentals for all different types of?
So Relais Plein Air in the southern section of the park is a great one to mention, because it's one of the few places in the park that you can take transport, like public transport to. So you can bus to Relais Plein Air, and they'll rent skis and snowshoes in winter, but in the summer they'll rent mountain bikes and fat bikes, and also all kinds of equipment that are adapted to people that have lower mobility. So that's absolutely great that they're there, and good service and letting you know what you need. And so they're in the southern section of the park, and just around Chelsea, the village by the visitor center, there's private outfitters that'll rent bikes and equipment in winter as well. So it's nice to try it out first, before investing, before knowing. And sometimes winter, it doesn't last that long if you have other things, whatever, 10 weekends. And so sometimes it's nice to rent it a few weekends and see how much you're willing to, commit your time and money into it. But it's a lot of fun to be outside, and a lot of people, you just go a few times and go, oh yeah, I am going to take the time to be out here and enjoy the park, at my level.
I've lived pretty much downtown Ottawa I've been here about 10, 11 years. So I've mostly lived downtown, and I refuse to go any further because I can bike to the park in like half an hour. I can drive from my door to Chelsea in like 15 minutes. It's a top priority for me in terms of where I live because I'm there so much. But this is crazy to believe, and something that blew my mind and still does. But Gatineau Park is the second most visited park in Canada. How has Gatineau Park become a top-tier destination in Canada for outdoor recreation? I'm assuming it's because what I just mentioned, how close it is to the city. Yeah.
Yeah. So we're going to mention the one that's most visited is Banff.
Yeah.
In the Rockies. But if you look at the size of Banff compared to the size of Gatineau Park, that's where we really have to focus on education and our conservation mandate, because there's a lot less space for a lot more people per kilometer square, if you will. So the park was exists because people liked recreational activities. As you know, Ottawa became the capital, people had secure jobs, they had free time, they had vacation, and they really saw across the river those rolling hills and that possibility to cross country ski and to hike and the bike. Those popular activities that are still really popular today have been for a long time. And so all that to say that people have lived close to the park, and more people are living this is a popular place to stay for a whole bunch of reasons, and the park is kind of wedged in there now. A lot of people use the park as a destination and as a place to spend time. It's become that popular because so many people live here, and vice versa. I think people choose to live here, and one of the reasons is because of the proximity of the park and all the all that it offers. So it's a popular place. There's a lot of people around. A lot of other national parks or provincial parks you have to drive to, as you were saying, within 15 minutes you get here. So other parks are less popular or more seasonal because they're a lot farther away from a bigger center. That's the challenge, is that, recreation versus conservation, and making sure that people feel welcomed, but that also understand that the conservation is the mandate we're trying to maintain, and we want them to love the park for it. And the reason all that to say that the reason that the park became a park, and that there were rules and a mandate, was people also noticed that if they wanted to do the cross country skiing and biking and hiking, it's because of their appreciation for nature. And it's because of the appreciation of a lot of green areas that you feel in the middle of when you're doing your activities. So that mandate needed to be there to protect the high quality activities that they were enjoying. Otherwise in those days it would have been logged for wood. Like people in the Depression in the 1930s, it was hard going. And so it was like, we're no longer just going to cut the white pine to build houses. We need to heat our homes and maybe sell it, and so there needed to be a group of people getting together to make sure that they could, hey, let's keep this part of it a place where we can play outside.
I think one of the big draws, let's specifically talk about cycling for a second, is, and I know that you guys do a survey every year of like, what do you think of, there's an entire loop in Gatineau Park that is closed for cars the majority of the week. I think that is safe to say. And that way you can cycle, you can roller ski on those parkways without worrying about cars. I think that's a huge part of it. And I think cycling blew up over the pandemic. People are looking for something to do. But I think the safety of biking on the parkways without worrying about getting hit by a car is huge. It's a huge part of it, right?
Yeah. Because if you're cycling on the parkways when they're closed, you can bring your family. And your child could veer a bit, to the left and to the right, and that's fine. They can stop midway and maybe have a cry that they're tired.
Yeah. I do that actually.
Exactly. Everybody's free to do that.
I do that at Champlain Lookout. I cry every time. Yeah.
Probably because you were proud to get there.
Yeah.
But so it's made it a lot more accessible to everyone because they give it a try. You can have an e-bike that you rent or that you own, and then it makes that loop accessible. Because a lot of people just don't feel safe if there's not a wide shoulders on those parkways. So it feels safer. It is safer. And so it makes that kind of active use of the parkway really important to those who are enjoying it. And so just to kind of, do the yin of that yang is that that's also why, since the parkways have been closed in COVID, it was kind of the trigger to that. Research has been done to see, and it's still ongoing, is there less roadkill? Are animals getting closer to the roads because they're not as weary? And there's less noise, throughout the week. And so that we're trying to see what the impact is on the conservation and on the plants and animals that live in the park. But also that's why this year, for the first time, there were shuttles every day of the year, every day of the week. For the first few years, the shuttles were weekends, and now they were every day because we want to make it accessible for people who say, you know what, we really want to get to the lookout. And so now it's accessible and it's green. It's a much better way environmentally to get into a shuttle and to get to the places you're looking for. So it's a hop on, hop off service, and it's free. It was every day except Wednesdays when the cars were allowed to be on the parkways this year. So that kind of balance that we're thriving for, and we're, looking to people to let us know, and some people let us know quite readily.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
But that's great. We really need to know where that balance will sit as a more permanent schedule between active use and private vehicles and the shuttle. That's still kind of ongoing and percolating to a more permanent situation.
Let's Take This Outside now has a newsletter. Keep up to date with outdoor news, events, and great discount codes and deals from our partners. Sign up today at letstakethisoutside.ca.
How are you able to control how many people visit the park? Like we said, COVID, I'm sure, blew up visitors. I'm not sure if you have any numbers, but how are you able to control this? We have passes in the winter, there's parking that you have to pay for at the beaches in the summer. Are there any plans moving forward, like entry fees, or is there any plans for controlling that at all?
No, I think there are no plans to control it. I think there are more plans to make it accessible through shuttles.
Yeah, smart.
More shuttles that are accessible, more time for different types of users. The plan is to make sure that people know how to get to the park. And yeah, there's a lot of people that are in the park. The density is quite high, but there's a kind of this natural limit when parking lots are full.
Yeah.
So that's why, that's why if you have a shuttle leaving downtown Ottawa or downtown Hull, and it brings you in, then you don't fall victim to a parking lot that's full, and that can be frustrating. I mean, if you've seen our social media, we often tell people, please have a plan B, because it could be quite frustrating when you're off you go for the day and the parking lot is full and there's nothing we can do, and the Pink Lake parking lot is full.
Yeah, always, yeah.
Beaches might be full, and so please, head to the northern beaches. And so a plan B is a really important thing for, somebody feeling satisfied with their day. But that's also kind of this natural limit to the amount of visitors at one time in the park.
Something that and not everyone has this luxury whatsoever, but I'm self-employed and I always try to, I don't want to say preach, but try to get to the park in off hours or try to go really, really early in the morning on weekends. I know you can't do it necessarily if you have kids, it's hard to get them going. But if you can take off even for an hour or two in the middle of the week, I sometimes have the whole park to myself on Tuesday mornings, yeah. Right? Again, not everyone has that luxury though.
And that's true even in the busiest times. Like October weekends are our busiest time, where it really is a capacity. The shuttles are full and the parking lots are full, but weekdays, no. So when people come in, and we always go, come on Tuesday, go, but it'll be busy. No, weekdays
no, it's not.
So there are off times in the park where you get to enjoy exactly what you were hoping to that day. And that's a great trick. A plan B is often to change the time of day or the day that you're going to be heading into the park. And the most popular places are the closest to Ottawa for sure. Just heading to the Meat Creek Valley is so beautiful. And it's just an extra 10 minutes north. And you have, the rolled bales of hay, and off you go to 5 kilometers, and you're in the Heritage or Healy Day shelters if you want, need a rest, need a snack, whether it's winter or summer. And so those alternative places that are just a bit farther out, that are less known, and for the first time this past summer, and I'm sure it'll come back next summer, there were shuttles on weekends that brought you to those places. So you were going to the less popular places like the Meat Creek Valley and Lac Philippe beaches. And a bus was taking you there. So there wasn't going to be a parking fee or somebody turning you around saying, not today, not now,
It's funny you mentioned those because Meat Creek Valley is perhaps one of my favorite parts of the park. Also Lac Philippe. It's just so quiet. And I know there's a lot of infrastructure. I'll ask you more about it later, but I know you're doing a lot of upgrades at Lac Philippe, right?
Yeah, so Lac Philippe has been under fully, is being fully renovated. So the campsites will be divided a bit differently, and there will be a new interpretation center where I'm preaching to the things I love doing, but there will be a space for
great
outdoor theater and a fire pit, and so it'll be fully renovated. Absolutely, yeah.
You have a lot of technology to help visitors. There's a grooming map for cross-country skiing. I don't know if it's yours or not. Avenza Maps, is that yours?
So Avenza is an app that we really highly recommend. So when you're on your phone and you download the
Avenza. Yeah.
app, and then from there you go to find the Gatineau Park trail map, whether it's the winter trail map or the summer trail map, and then that's in the Avenza app, and that will geolocate you on official trails.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's a lot of other apps out there that we know, and I can name all trails.
Yeah.
But that people go, oh, I'm lost. I'm on a trail and it looks like a trail and it feels like a trail, and all trails told you to get there. But it's not an official trail. So it's not one that's on a map. It's not one that's maintained by park employees. So it makes it harder to find you if you're lost, to take care of you if you're hurt. So Avenza is a great app to have because make sure, and we provide Avenza with the most recent trail map.
That's great.
For all seasons. So Avenza is great to walk around because the cell reception in the park is quite spotty. You really can't depend on cell reception, and so to have yourself be on Google Maps or the other app, but Avenza works because you've downloaded the app and the map, so you'll know where you are.
It's very cool. It's very, very cool.
It's easy. There's no compromise. You know exactly where you are, and you know that you're on an official trail. So if something happens, people will be able to find you, and that's something that's good to know when you're in the park. It's good to tell somebody where you're going, just because cell phone reception is spotty, and so that somebody worries about you if you're not back when you should be, and that in every day shelter there is an emergency radio, kind of like a walkie-talkie on the wall, if you will.
Yeah.
And so a two-way radio that you can, you just press a button and say hi. Often people don't know what to say, so they'll go hello, and then the emergency radio.
Oh no.
We'll go, hi, this is the emergency radio. Do you need help? And then go, oh yeah, somebody's here. And they realize that this will work, and they want to say that possibly somebody needs help a kilometer away from there. But in everyday shelter, there's a sure way to get hold of somebody that will help you with whatever your issue may be.
I didn't know that. Is that 24/7?
24/7.
Oh, I love that. I had no idea.
Yeah, so it's a good way.
The cross-country ski trails, so you have this, so first of all, you have a list of all the trails and what, like, if it's recommended for skiing or not. And I think you recommend wax too.
Yeah.
But I mostly skate, so that's why I don't worry about it. But you also have this whole like map where it's like colored. It's like green if it's good, it's been groomed. It's yellow, I think, and then red if it's not recommended. It is very like, how do you keep track of that? And tell me a bit more about grooming. Before I hit record, you say they groom literally all night because, like you said, it's 200 kilometers of trails. Anyway, this is a lot. There's a lot of questions.
There's a lot of work. So grooming, it's amazing. I mean, it's funny because when I work in client services and we're with people, and when I say when people complain about grooming, remind them and feel very confident that it's the absolute best that it can be with the conditions that are there.
Yeah.
Yeah, so website-wise, the website is updated twice a day once winter season is. So by 8:00 in the morning or by 8:30.
Mm-hmm.
And then around midday, it's updated again with maybe there's a change of temperature, a change of wax recommendation, and maybe some grooming has happened and we want to update the trails. Or maybe ski patrollers, there are ski patrollers 7 days a week, have gone on a trail that wasn't recommended because we didn't really know how it would look. Mm-hmm. But then, somebody skied it and went, oh no, it's good. We're good. We can recommend it. So twice a day that's updated to let you know what the temperature is, what the snow temperature is, what wax you should be using if you're classic skiing, and what trails are recommended. And as I say, there's an interactive map so that you can physically look at like a circuit that you might be wanting to do and know if it's one that we recommend or not. So that's amazing. The groomers are out. Every time there's 5 centimeters of snow, they'll go out and they'll compact track. Of course, if there's more than 5 centimeters, that goes without saying. And then they have a weekly schedule where they'll go out 2 or 3 times a week regardless. If it hasn't snowed for weeks, people will go, how come the conditions are so amazing? Well, they still go out and they'll take the snow that's there and they'll break it up and then re-flatten it and reset it. So sometimes the same snow is worked and reworked and it stays amazing. And if there's a lot of snow, say there's a huge snowstorm, 25, 30 centimeters, it'll take more than a night to get through the whole park because as you compact, it'll only compact the first 15 centimeters of snow. So the skiers feel like, oh, it's pretty soft. It'll take a few times around to compact it and to get it to optimal ski conditions. Yeah.
It's funny you say that because we had our first big dump of snow. So I went it with a couple girlfriends within a couple days of it snowing. The conditions were soft. But I'm like, I'm just happy to be out here. But I have to remind myself that, and thank you, I have to remind myself that it takes a while for them to go through the whole network and to compact that all. It was still fresh snow. It hasn't had a chance for the base to set.
And they don't have a base, so they're working on
yeah.
asphalt. They're working on rocks. Rocks and branches make it for a very uneven. So it takes a lot more snow on backcountry trails or on forested trails because all the trail needs to be covered in snow and then more snow for it to feel like a ski trail.
I feel like I need to interview like the groomer or something.
I know. I often think of them, they work at night. They're alone in a machine, a huge machine, and they're alone and it's in the dark and it's cold and they're there, through like in the middle of Gatineau Park with big lights, making sure that when dawn, arrives, skiers have the best conditions, and they're so meticulous and they know exactly what they're doing. Often when it is really wet snow, they have to sit and wait and let the water kind of trickle out of the snow. Because if you track set really wet snow, and then it gets cold, that becomes ice.
Yeah.
Those aren't good conditions. If you wait hours and let the water kind of trickle through the snow, that snow is now a little wet, but not, ice. It'll turn into beautifully packed snow rather than ice when it freezes over. But they know all that, like the science of what the snow looks like and how long they have to wait, and then out they go, and then they report in like at 6-7 in the morning. They're coming back from there, and they've taken note of all the trails they've done and what it looks like, and that's transferred to the park team, that transfers to the comms team, and the website is updated every single morning.
That's actually kind of amazing. Yeah, it's funny because I was staying in one of your yurts that you can rent out in the north part of the park, I think from P17. I had a really great time with a couple of girlfriends a couple of years ago. It was beautiful. And, it's so peaceful. It's so dark. We're asleep. But it was like in the middle of the night, I'm like, what is that sound? And it was, and it kind of scared you because you're like in the middle of Gatineau Park in like the middle of the night. And it was a groomer. I was like, I was so scared. Second.
Yeah, it's big lights and it's big noise, and you're thinking that's not nature.
Yeah.
It really is amazing, and they're quite dedicated, and they also compact. There's 3 hiking trails in the park, so hiking trails are the ones that you don't need a day pass for, because if you're going snowshoeing or fat biking or cross country skiing in the park, you need to have either a season pass that you've bought online or gone to the visitor center for, or you can buy a day pass online or at the parking lot where you'll park. So that's for snowshoeing, fat biking, cross-country skiing. If you want to go for a hike, you can go on the Pioneers Trail, which is, in the southern section of the park. You can go on Loriot Trail, which is from Mackenzie King Estate parking lot number 6.
Beautiful. Yeah.
Or the Sugarbush Trail, that's right where the visitor center is. So nice and flat and easy. Loriot is a bit longer, a bit, for more advanced hikers. But that's where that offer is 3 hiking trails where you don't need a pass, you don't need equipment. So if you're going for a walk and you don't want to be on icy, sidewalks or in town, you can be within the park and enjoy a winter activity safely. Those trails are accessible, and they need to be compacted. So whenever there's snow, those machines will go on those trails and have a very, very heavy carpet, so that the snow is compacted, so that doing it, which is great. We use those trails a lot for education.
Rachel, can we do a very quick PSA that please don't walk on the cross-country ski trails?
Yeah. So user conflict.
I said I wouldn't bring it up, but I just want to say, let's do a little PSA. And I feel like anyone listening to this podcast knows, but I do want to do a quick PSA that please stick to your whatever activity you're doing, please stick to the designated activity. Right?
At all times in the park, all seasons, be on the trail that is safe and planned for the activity that you're doing. And we were just talking about how much work goes into the cross-country ski conditions. If you want corduroy for skate skiing, if you want track sets for your classics, a lot of work, a lot of money. The cross-country skiers have a pass, and it's the most expensive pass because they're the ones that are using the trails that need the most maintenance. So people can be moody about, about, about seeing people that are either snowshoeing or walking. Because if you're walking on boots, you're going through those trails, even if it's 5 centimeters, 6 centimeters, that becomes a ski trail that's not ideal, could possibly be dangerous. And so if you're hiking those hiking trails that are there for you and that you can, have access to without a pass and without equipment, they're there. And if you're snowshoeing, you want to be on a snowshoe trail, and they'll get you to the day shelters and have a positive experience. It's just every trail has a use, and the users need to respect that for sure. To have a more positive experience and just to not meet people that are grumpy to see you.
And if you are a cross-country skier, here's the thing. I think most of the time, you and I discussed it, I think most of the time it's just straight up people didn't know. So if I was to see someone walking on cross-country ski trails, I'd be like, hey, by the way, you're like not supposed to be here. There's lots of great trails. Maybe point them in the right direction. Don't be mean about it. But some people might tell you to bleep off or something. Yeah. But I think that educating versus being rude about it is like not, the way to go.
Yeah, like a very easy. It's we often use it when we'll go. Are you looking for a cross country?
Oh, weird.
Are you looking for us? Are you lost? And there's a lot more. And there's that there's that exchange as well. That there's a lot more snowshoe trails than there used to be, and some now, just in the recent years, are right beside ski trails. And so some skiers that have been using the park for years are seeing snowshoers right beside. And they're going, hey. But you know what? This trail is now there because it's connecting to another snowshoe trail, and it's on the newer maps. It might not be on the map you have in your backpack, but so just be aware that people are looking for a fun time in the park, and maybe helping each other out is a better way of going.
About it. There seems to be, like I said, a lot of development in the park right now. I know that Wolf Trail was just worked on quite a bit. I know there's some. Oh, I can't wait. Okay, there's some new, because there's a lot of like water running down that. I know it's so popular, right? In the north side of the park, I think there's some new trails being developed. Maybe correct me if I'm wrong on that.
Yeah.
And then, of course, Lac Philippe has the development of everything you mentioned. What does a future look like for infrastructure, trails, and how does the conservation come into this too?
So conservation is the leading motor.
The priority.
Yeah.
Priority.
For all that work even.
Yeah.
So as you were saying, so Wolf Trail is a very popular trail at the end of parking lot number 13, the end parking lot by Meech Lake. And it's an 8.3 kilometer trail.
Oh, what does that mean?
Wait, stand by. That's the end of my story.
Oh, sorry, I got excited, Rachel. I'm so sorry.
And it's a loop, and we love loops, and it's a bit challenging, So it was kind of a longer, more challenging trail. It's super popular. You said it, going up when you veered right to loop around. A lot of water, a lot of necessary kind of stepping off the trail and going way wide, and kind of those leave no trace principles. That's the last thing you want to do. You want to stay on the trail. You want the footprint to be the width of a trail, not the width of a trail and then meters and meters on either side, because people were getting, soaked. And so that was the reason why it was renovated, and was to make it a trail that would be easily maintained, kept safe, so people would very naturally stay on the trail. It's still challenging. It still goes up that hill. It'll just have boardwalks and areas. It's been kind of diverted in some areas so that it doesn't go through an area that will become wet in various seasons and stay wet and muddy, so that the imprint of the use will be a lot smaller. And because of that diversion, it is very close to 10 kilometers. So you can just divert it for fun to make it 10, but so it's about, I think it's 9.8. I don't have the rate. So it went from 8.3 to about 9.5.
Oh my, okay. So everyone's Strava segments will have to update.
Oh yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
this is
exactly.
Like as someone who's hiked Wolf Trail 4,000 times, this is because my watch, my Garmin, which I'm wearing right now, knew it was 8.34 kilometers, right? So this is big news.
And that's where all trails this winter, people will go, it's not here, but no, they have to follow the new signage that is
Okay.
there. And so it's probably, it was waiting for winter to settle. And so it will be, or has been just recently opened, because it's a winter snowshoe trail, right?
Okay.
People will snowshoe or use their crampons. So if you have a pass for snowshoeing, and it's well compacted, you can be on crampons and do the Wolf Trail. And so it'll be open throughout this winter, and next spring it'll be it'll be the summer version of the trail.
This is breaking news for Strava users.
Yeah. And I think some people were bummed going, it's the only trail that actually is a little bit technical, but it stays challenging. It's just better for the environment.
Good. That's great to hear. Yeah. Rachel, is there anything else you want to share with my Let's Take This Outside listeners in terms of Gatineau Park and concert? I feel like we could chat for 2 hours, but I'll cut it off now. But is there anything else you'd like to share with my listeners?
I think people need to feel welcomed in the park. I think they shouldn't be overwhelmed with any level of activity that, whatever they feel like they want to do, it's probably available and accessible. You can call the visitor center, and talk to someone and ask about recommendations and suggestions. The website is gatineaupark.gc.ca is well updated, maintained with what you can do and where, and what's closed and what's being, what's under construction for now. So I think to be informed before you go is a message. And I think I really want people to just give it a try, give something new a try, or give something they're doing somewhere else and bring it to Gatineau Park and know that you're entering this, a beautiful place. You'll feel good coming out of it, and you'll know more about, the natural history of the place. And if you go to Pink Lake and you read the panels, you'll know that it's a Pink family that was there before. I think it's a good thing that a lot of people know about the park and use the park. I think we just need to know how to do it well.
Rachel Paquette from the NCC in Gatineau Park. It is my playground. It is my safe space. It is my happy place. And for so many others, thank you so much for taking time today.
You're welcome. It was my pleasure.
Thanks for listening. For more Let's Take This Outside, go to letstakethisoutside.ca.
Produced and distributed by the Sound Off Media Company.